Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, good whatever time and place it is in which you are tuning in to today's episode. My name is Sam. As you know, I'm your lovely little host for hopefully all of this podcast eternity. I wanted to hop on real quick and give you all a heads up. I know I say it almost every time, but today's episode is definitely going to be different compared to what we've done in the past and going forward. Usually, as you know, we have a special guest. They come on, we talk about whatever, and for those who tune in on YouTube, we always film at a location that is somewhat relevant to whatever the topic is going to be. However, due to the nature of today's topic, our special guest has requested to remain anonymous, and therefore, for their safety and protection, we're only going to be referring to them as A. And, you know, like I said, we usually film at a location that is somewhat relevant. We're completely throwing that idea out the window for this episode. However, instead, for your viewing pleasure, A and I will be playing Sorry. And I forgot how brutal this game is. This game is so intense, even with just the two of us. For those tuning in on YouTube, you're in for a treat. I got you. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. Thanks for tuning in. If you're listening on, a regular podcast station, disregard. If you're on YouTube, put your comments in the comment area. Let me know who you think is going to win. This is going to be a good episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye.
It's simply whatever. Hey.
Hey.
How's it going?
Going good. How about you?
Oh, I am doing fucking fantastic. Fucking fantastic.
Awesome.
So why have you decided that you want to be anonymous for today's episode?
Okay, so mainly because my partners and I are not out to our families.
Ooh, okay. All right.
So that would be sort of my biggest concern is someone stumbling onto a video and calling my mother.
Yes, that is totally fair. Now you say partners. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. So at the moment I have 2 partners.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
One of them is my husband, and one of them is my boyfriend.
Ooh. How long have you been married? And how long have you been with your boyfriend?
Okay.
Very curious.
So 3 years married, a little more, 3 years and a couple months.
Cute.
And with my boyfriend, it is coming up on a year now, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow,
So
that's so wholesome.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that, actually.
So you would say that you are a polyamorous woman, is what I'm gathering here.
Definitely.
That is sick. That is sick to
Thank
me.
you.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Of course. For people who don't know, I Googled this definition because I'm a book nerd. The definition of polyamorous is characterized by or involved in the practice of engaging in multiple romantic and or sexual relationships with the consent of all the people involved. Quote, intimacy and trust are essential to successful polyamorous relationships. Now, with your husband, is he also like how does that work? So is he also technically polyamorous?
So he is also polyamorous.
Okay.
My boyfriend is not.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right,
Okay.
right. So you could totally be a monogamous person who is in a relationship with someone who has other partners and identifies as polyamorous. And some people are totally cool with that. My husband, not so much. He was very much like, well, if you're going to have multiple partners, then I'm going to have multiple partners. And I said, yes, that's fine. That's kind of the whole point.
Right, exactly. That is amazing. I'm actually really, I don't know, I guess the word wouldn't be baffled, but, as somebody who has never been in a polyamorous relationship and has only strictly been monogamous, I can't imagine how much communication and, I don't want to say skill is not the word, but like genuine thought has to go into communication with your partner, and work. It just ultimately work.
And bravery also. I think it's kind of like it's a leap, right? You know, because society just decides to paint it as something negative, and they try to make it scary. Because if you're a young person especially, and you're starting to feel like you might be different from whatever society says is normal, and they've portrayed different as scary, you're less likely to actually try to be yourself, and more likely to try to hide who you are and fit this, you know, thing that society has decided is normal, which like doesn't even, there is no normal, right? So basically that is why the bravery. And for the work part, you're right. Communication.
Absolutely. I mean, that can be, I feel like it's weird. I feel like people who are in monogamous relationships have this idea of like, oh, well, I talk to my partner. And it's like, it's not just about talking. It's cluing them in on everything. Like, you know, and keeping them involved and up to speed, you know, with, I mean, granted, I'm assuming it's not an experience that I share.
No, a lot of the work is the same as the work that you have to do in a monogamous relationship. It's probably just more important.
Right, exactly.
In a polyamorous one. But I really do think that for me and my husband, being in a polyamorous relationship has made it much better really has given us the communication skills we needed in our monogamous relationship before we opened it up.
Right.
You know, and we just were able to sort of brush issues under the rug because we had that like, oh, we're happily married and normal and we're looking good to society, you know, and like, so that was kind of enough, you know, even though there were all these issues. And now if we have issues, we understand we have to talk about them right away.
It has to be addressed immediately before
even if it's
it turns into something else.
And the hardest thing is saying to someone that you love, you know, I felt attracted to this other person yesterday, right? And if you're in a monogamous relationship, that's still happening. You know, it's not like some people experience that and others don't. Like, we know that, like, I mean, the statistics on cheating, like, are so wrong. You know, whatever you Google on statistics on cheating is going to be so underreported because people are not going to admit that
people don't want to talk about it.
Right. So the real number could be, you know, 75%, 90. I don't know. It must be very rare for people to not
I look
cheat.
at it this way. If there's an entire culture of fuckboys, you know, just be in an open relationship.
Yeah,
you know?
well, and the whole Ashley Madison thing, right?
Like, I don't know what that is. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Apparently it's a website you can go on to try to find people who are looking to cheat. So,
what?
So if you want to cheat on your partner with someone who also has a partner so they don't out you to your partner, then you can find someone that way.
Bro, what?
That, to me, is not a solution.
Oh, my God. I had no idea.
Yeah. So it's a huge problem. And, like, I always feel like I was aware. And my parents are happily married in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
So I had that. And my husband's are, too, actually. But I always knew from a young age that, like, I felt like I was either never going to get married or I was going to get married like 10 times in my life.
Right. Because you knew that it was never going to be like just with one person kind of deal.
And when sorry.
Hey, girl.
Amazon delivery. But I remember when I started dating as like a, you know, 9th grader or something, 10th grader maybe.
Yeah.
One of the thoughts I had right when I first started dating is I wish there were more of me to go around. And I didn't know what that meant at that time, you know? Like, I didn't understand that was sort of a foreshadowing of where I was going to be today.
That was your brain as developed as it was at that point, trying to rationalize everything.
Right, because I was just like, there are so many cool people that I meet and feel a connection with and would love to explore a relationship with. But I know that as soon as I pick one, I have to immediately...
commit.
Well, and end all connection with other people in that way. Right? That's the only... sort of place that we expect that from people, or society expects that from people, right? We don't say, oh, only have one friend, right? And we don't say, only have one kid,
true.
right?
I never thought
only
about
have
it that
one
way.
kid. Imagine if someone said that to you. Like,
I never would have pictured it in that phrasing. You're 100% right.
Yeah, it's a little crazy to be like, oh, only have one partner no matter what. That's a lot to put on one person.
And we can split love between so many different people in other terms. Yeah. Platonic love, familial love. Yeah. But romantic love only has to be with one person.
Right,
and that I feel like, what was the term you used earlier? Like...
Which one?
Like a post-Catholicism.
Oh, what did I say? I said,
what was it?
Judeo-Christian.
Judeo-Christian society. And I really feel like that's a big part of it. I remember going to my first wedding as a kid, and they were saying, like, you know, oh, it's like a cardinal sin, adultery, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, but everyone cheats all the time.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
So you're telling me everyone's going to hell? Like, that sounds wild to me. And granted, I grew up very Catholic. So
okay.
Yeah, but
I grew up with no religion whatsoever,
which is beautiful.
That may have been freeing. Yeah, and and my husband also grew up with no religion whatsoever, but we have totally opposing political views. So like for me, like I'm more from like more of a liberal place. A lot of my friends are LGBTQ. You know, like it's just not that strange to have something sort of like different about me.
Right.
But for him, he's like a very sort of conservative, traditional, you know,
so
normal type of person. Yeah.
Right.
And you do really see a range in polyamory. And there's also so many different ways to be polyamorous.
I was going to say, I guess one of the beautiful things about being polyamorous is that you can be with not only like multiple people, but different kinds of people, and you can learn so much more about yourself through that. Like you can be with somebody who is more conservative. I'm not saying directly your husband, but more conservative in life and religion and relationships, while also being with someone who's like, let's paint the town red, bitch. Like,
and maybe your personality has both sides in it, you know?
Exactly,
so you just like enjoy that. So like for me, like my husband is very stable, very responsible, very level-headed, like just like so good in so many ways. Like I love him so much. And then my boyfriend is like, he's got like this more childish side to him, which I need in my life, you know? Exactly. Like I really need both.
Right.
And neither one of them would be able to give me both.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
there is a chance that they would end up having to sacrifice a piece of themselves to I don't want to say accommodate, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a lot less of having to lose anything of yourself and just a lot more to gain. Yes. Really.
Yes,
you know?
Yes, definitely.
Something I was wondering well before we even sat down was like, I know you said that you wanted to remain anonymous for the reasons that you have. Would you say that like anonymity is really common in the poly community? We're gonna phrase it like that.
Yeah, no, the poly community is a thing. Like there's a huge poly community. You can follow poly Instagram pages.
Is there a dating app for polyamory?
Sort of. There's not one that's exclusively for polyamory. There are some that are better. OkCupid has an option to say, I'm only looking for people who are polyamorous.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's an app called Field. It used to be called Thrinder, right? Like Tinder, but for three. But I guess that was a copyright infringement, so they had to change their name. Yeah, a little close. So another FEELD, right? Field.
Field. Gotcha. Like
and that is pretty common for polyamorous people to be looking on there. That's where we started also, me and my husband.
Oh, nice.
But I'm sorry, what was the question about?
Is anonymity common in the poly community?
So it kind of depends on what kind of poly you are. So like there's one category, right, which again, me and my husband started here, is swinging. Right.
Oh, Oh, I never thought about that. Swinging and polyamory are like
they intersect.
Like,
for sure. And people in the swingers community tend to be weirdly like overly heteronormative. Actually, like there's almost you see a lot of toxic masculinity there, which is rather strange. Yeah,
I would not imagine that.
And those people identify themselves as being like totally normal, right? But then they just have this private part of their life. You know, like swinging is like...
So they hide it away.
They hide it away, for sure. You see a lot of people who are in, you know, prestigious careers, you know, stuff like that. And they just keep it a secret. It's just something they do on their own time in private, right? So that's one way of doing it. This is not my preference. It's probably more what my husband, you know...
Like would prefer, maybe?
Yeah, it's probably more up his alley. It's also not as much of a time commitment because you're not having a whole other relationship with somebody.
Right.
And he works way more hours than I do, so that is a factor. And we've had awesome swinging experiences, for sure. And not all swingers are going to be like that, right? You definitely also encounter people who are more like, hey, this is who I am. Yeah. Like, it's because I think there is a feeling of shame that can be attached. So it's really whether you feel that shame
or not,
or you
how
are able
open
to.
you are to exposing that kind of really intimate place
to public
yourself.
Ridicule, right?
Right, absolutely.
So on the other end of it, if you're polyamorous, the way that I don't know if you heard Willow Smith is polyamorous. Do you remember this?
Is she?
Yeah.
I love Willow Smith, and
so
I had no idea.
This just came out on like a red table talk. I don't really know.
I think that's her mom.
She does it with her mom and her grandma.
I want to say it's their podcast, but it might just be a show.
I think it's a show. I don't
or
even
it's what
know.
we have, where it's like a show and a podcast. Like,
and she talked about it. She was like, "This is why I'm polyamorous." She was like, I'm really open about it with everybody. She was like, you know, it's not just all about sex. Like, out of all my friends, I'm the only one who's polyamorous, and I have the least sex. And, you know, that's a thing. You can even have asexual relationships within your, you know, we call it a polycule.
Wait, that's so cute. Oh my god, that's adorable. A polycule?
Polycule, like a molecule of polyamorous people.
That's adorable.
Yeah, there's a lot of cute little names.
Oh my
actually.
god, that's my word of the day.
Polycule.
That's
Meet
adorable.
my polycule. Yeah, that's pretty.
So
cute.
like I know it kind of goes back to the definition of it, where you know it could be romantic or sexual or both. But I guess what is lacking there is that you could also be asexual and just be romantic in a romantic polyamorous relationship.
Right. And again, you know, if you're in like the LGBTQ plus community, then you're maybe more respectful of asexual relationships, like recognize them more than the general public that's just
Google.
like yeah, exactly. So I think there's also an intersection with like the LGBTQ community, even though you might be totally heterosexual and be polyamorous, right? Like you don't have to not be straight, but just in terms of accepting something that's different, you know, like there's a respect, because it's like, okay, like I understand what you're going through, because society also is seeing me as being,
they're also demonizing
different
me,
and scary. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that is insane. I'm really having this whole like awakening moment right now of like, not even like within myself, of just like, how have I never thought about this before?
Yeah,
it's not something
shocking.
that ever popped in my head.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
Part of it is that society also encourages, it's called toxic monogamy, right? Monogamy on its own, not a bad thing. Like for some people, it's the right thing, you know? And like,
it's just what
again,
works for them.
That's valid. Yeah, like no polyamorous person is going to be like, you can't be monogamous, right? Like that's not, like we're just like, no,
toxic
let
polyamory.
us do what we want to do. Yeah, and then you can do what you want to do.
Exactly.
But the toxic monogamy thing is like in pop culture, like we see a lot of songs and movies and stuff where it's just like, you're supposed to, you know, fuse with your partner and become the same person, and you own one another's souls.
Twin flames.
Yeah, you know, and it's and we also even encourage like excessive like jealousy and like possessiveness. We're like, oh, it means he loves me. It means she loves me. Like, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No,
actually.
not really. But we like to have that be, or somehow we've associated that with like proof of love, is like how obsessed you are with your partner and how terrified you are of them ever being with anybody else. When in reality, their choice to stay with you shouldn't be because they told you, oh, we're in a relationship once, and now you're holding them to that for every day of your life. It should be a decision they're making every single day to stay with you.
Well, that's the idea of the top Hallmark holiday, Valentine's Day, of why they got to go all out on Valentine's Day when you shouldn't have to. You should be showing that love all the time.
Yeah.
Like, And so what do we
you
say?
shouldn't
That's
want to
toxic.
trap your partner, right? Like you shouldn't be like, oh, well, this person said that they'd never leave me.
Yeah.
So they can't ever leave me. Like, no.
Word is not bond. Word is not bond,
no,
my friend.
Yeah, toxic monogamy.
Yeah, I like that. Toxic monogamy. And it's so true, because you see it in so much of like
pop culture.
In pop culture and media and music. Yeah. There's so much, like every love song is about you're the one.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of the one, you know, it's
how am I supposed to breathe without you? You know, and it's like, that's not good for you either. Like, are you really trying to tell people, like, I can't be my own person? Like, without my partner, like, I can't function?
Yeah.
Like, is that who you want to be?
It goes back to the losing yourself for somebody.
Yeah, no,
you know,
for sure. The codependency. Codependency.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
So polyamory is one way to try to stay away from that.
When did you find out that you were, or not find out, that's not the way to say that. When did you have your, like, I'm here now, aha moment? Yeah. Like, I mean, I know you mentioned you were in, like, 9th grade, right?
Yeah,
and you, like,
but I didn't know what that was.
Right,
you know?
right.
I did always try to stay out of relationships. Like, my experience in high school and college was very much like, no, I don't do relationships. You know, like, we can date, but I always knew no matter how much I liked someone, I was gonna meet someone else, I was gonna hit it off with them. Yeah. And I just didn't want the messiness of feeling tethered to someone, you know? Yeah. And I don't think people really got what it was about, you know? And I didn't really get what it was about. Right. But then I guess what really happened is when I thought about marriage. Because I met my husband, I loved him so much, I wanted to be with him forever. And interestingly, it wasn't me I was worried about in that case, because I was just so head over heels, like obsessed. Right. I couldn't imagine having a spark with anybody else ever again, even though I knew logically that wasn't true. I was in my fields. I was in my fields. I was like, no, I'm 100% committed. But I was like, what about him? Yeah. I was like, how am I going to be enough for him for his entire life? And what I mean by that is the brain craves novelty, right? Like, this is kind of the thing that I come back to for, like, the why of all this. The brain craves novelty. The neuroscience in your brain.
I'm here for this. Please, go off, please.
New things, right? Anything new, your brain is like, yes, right? And so that means that either your relationship has to have a ton of, like, kink exploration, right? Like, you have to be, like, constantly, like, introducing new things and trying to, like, entertain your brain with new things with the same partner, or a whole new partner is already, like, brand new novelty, right? Everything about them is new. Everything, you know, everything you're learning about them, discovering about them, your relationship, it's all new.
It's all new. It's all exciting.
Right. And
which is I feel like the cornerstone of cheating is
that is it.
It's the taboo of, not taboo. It's the spark that I can't do it. I'm not supposed to be doing it. You know what I mean? Partly, yeah. I mean, more specifically in cheating, like where I feel like in polyamory, it's like, oh, it's still exciting because it's a new person, but, you know, my back home relationship, so to speak, isn't going to fall apart, you know?
Yeah, and, like, it kind of can show you, because, like, when you start a new relationship, like, when I started dating my boyfriend about, like, a little less than a year ago, we have this thing, again, terminology. We call it new relationship energy, NRE.
Okay. So, honeymoon phase?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, like, you're so excited when you think about that person, you start smiling to yourself, you know what I mean? And not that I wasn't in love with my husband, right? But I wasn't feeling that with him because he was familiar and I loved him for all the things that are familiar. Right, exactly. So what happens is you start to, like, appreciate the new relationship energy you're getting out of that new relationship. But then at the same time, the security that you're feeling in your existing relationship that you've put a ton of work and effort into to make sure it has a strong foundation. And so you know you can fall back on it if there's drama in one of your other relationships, right? Yeah. You're not alone. You're not dating alone, right? Like, if you go through a breakup, you have another partner to help you get through it, right? Like, breakups are really hard.
Like, you would go through a whole breakup with somebody and still be able to fall back on your other partner to help
My
you
husband recently broke up with his girlfriend, actually.
Really?
It was really difficult for him, but, like, I was aware of how difficult it was for him, so I was making extra effort to, like, be there for him.
I kind of love this, like, a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I love it too. It makes me so happy.
My whole heart is like 3 times the size right now. Oh my god.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet.
How did you meet your husband? And how did you meet your boyfriend? Okay, let's start with your husband. How'd you meet your husband?
Okay. So actually at work, I was an engineer.
Oh, cool. Yeah, okay. What kind of engineer?
Getting too specific now.
That's fair. I'm just so curious.
There's not that many female engineers, so.
Okay. That's fair. That is fair. Okay.
So, I met my husband at work. He is 5 years older than me, so he was like a more established engineer on the project I was on. Different companies, but we ended up working together. And I just fell in love and mercilessly pursued him until he finally had no choice but to give in. No, I'm kidding. No, he liked me too. But.
I'm here for it. And then how did you meet your boyfriend?
So my boyfriend, I actually also, I already knew he was someone from my past that I had been friends with.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I kind of ended up just hitting him up and being like, hey, I'm in an open marriage. I have, no awkwardness. So, for me, propositioning someone is, fun. It's not so that just awkward. Yeah.
Putting it on the table.
Right. And, he was, of course, hesitant because he was like, how am I supposed to date you if you're married? And, am I not always going to be coming second? You know what? There's concerns. But, again, that's why you have to communicate and talk about different situations and boundaries, right? Boundaries.
Oh my God.
And this has been huge for me too because I struggle with boundaries in general. It is a huge problem for me.
Me too, girl.
A lot of the people our age maybe. I don't even know where this came from.
I don't know why, but I've realized it so much and maybe more so in women than men.
Yes, agree.
It's a big we're a big people-pleasing generation. Yes. I don't know where it came from. Yes. Maybe that's something I have to talk about with my therapist at a later date. But, you're 100% right. And me learning to set boundaries has been such a new development in the last literally 6 months for me. Just, I can't do this right now. I'm not saying I'm not here for you, but I can't address this at the moment.
Right. I'm here
We'll get to it at one point, but right now I can't.
To the extent that I can be here for you right now. Yeah, for sure. Exactly. For sure. Absolutely. It's, there was a good quote. It was boundaries are the distance from which I can love you and me equally or something.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
But that's literally what it is.
So that's the thing, in a relationship like this, you don't have any choice but to try to figure out, okay, what are my boundaries? And then you have to communicate them, just because the stakes are really high if you don't.
Right. And then if those boundaries get crossed, is going back to that core addressing it immediately communication you did this and you fucked up and I don't like it.
And we've had that. My husband and I have set boundaries in swinging that got violated in the heat of the moment.
Right. It happens.
And then it's just well, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? You know what I mean? And we have to talk about it. Why did I do that? Right?
So then going forward, that's not going to happen again. Right. It's instilling that trust within each other that you can, dance away, but you still come back to each other at the core of it all.
And also that, people mess up. That's kind of the thing about monogamy is, if you cheat once, it's done. Do you know what I really? There's no repairing that relationship.
But if you do, then you're looked at through the people around you as oh, you're so stupid. Why did you go back to them? Kind of deal. You know what I mean?
And so you feel like you look bad, and then you're resenting the person. Yeah, no, for sure.
And then there's that weird. I'm gonna call it that cloud over not the relationship, but I've been in those relationships where I'm cheated on before, and it's well, I want to go out to the bars with my friends and I want you there, but now it's going to be fucking weird because my friends know you cheated on me, It makes it very uncomfortable. And even if you do manage to work through that communication, you're now having to deal with the aftermath of it all for God knows how long,
Right. So, I'm sorry, to answer your question.
My God.
I got really distracted.
No, you're fine.
But what happened with me and my husband actually was so I said to him in the beginning, listen, if you ever cheat on me, it's okay. You know, I was just let me know and we will work through it. I said that to him in the beginning because, again, I was just how could it never happen? How could it never happen? It has to happen, you know? And he was all oh, okay, well, I don't think that's going to happen, whatever.
Well, I don't plan on it.
But then at some point he had asked me, because I'm also bisexual, if we could have a threesome. Mm-hmm. Which is,
classic
such
bisexual question. Every
so
single
silly.
time I meet someone, I'm oh, I'm bi. It's you want to have a threesome?
Right.
Every fucking time.
But again, I really, I like this guy a lot. So I was sure, definitely, we can do that, right? And then I'm wait, how? Right? That's not that easy. Yeah. So, I asked a couple friends. They were that's weird. I was okay, it's fine. Sorry. I get it. Yeah.
Sorry,
no problem. Right. And then we got on Thrinder. Which, is now Field, right? That's how we found it, is the app for threesomes. And We were looking for a threesome. This, by the way, is a stage of polyamory that also has a name. It's called unicorn hunting.
Unicorn. Why is it called
I'll tell
hunting?
you. Because you're a heterosexual couple.
Right.
Looking for a single girl that wants to sleep with a heterosexual couple. What do you think your chances are of finding one? About the same as finding a unicorn. Exactly. You got it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm learning so much
about
these terms and
There's
lingos
such
right
a little like subculture here.
Oh my God.
It's so cool to explore.
I am 100% in this right now.
There's great websites. Like if you just like Google polyamory, there's so many resources. I love the internet. I'm so grateful for the internet.
Yes. We wouldn't have this if it wasn't for the internet.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So you were...
Oh, so we were unicorn hunting. We were unicorn hunting, which
right.
is super frowned upon because it's connected to this other thing called OPP, which is a one penis policy, right? So there's a lot of couples that are like, oh, we only want girls.
Yes.
Right? And that's not good because it's not fair.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that's not right for like anyone. Like I'm sure there are people who
maybe want that.
Do want that, but you can't force it on other people and like you can't try to trick people into it. You know, like there's a lot of sometimes they do sketchy things. Then you start crossing
different boundaries and it becomes a whole other thing.
Exactly. So like polyamory can be taken advantage of or like used in negative ways. And and I experienced that the first time. So what happened is we couldn't find a unicorn, obviously.
Yeah.
So then we switched what we were looking for to couples, right?
Okay.
Instantly we had tons of matches.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I had no idea there were so many couples out there looking to, you know, swap partners.
Right.
Or just group sex, whatever it ends up being. Yeah. So we went on a date with a couple that we met. And we had a good time.
Like a legitimate double date.
Yeah, we went on
awesome.
a legitimate double date. Yeah, like went out for drinks. And I had talked to my husband. I was like, okay, like, do you feel like you want to just like do it? He was so like anxious and nervous.
Oh my God, I would be. Oh my God.
And I was too, but I was trying to stay calm for him, right?
Yeah. So
like,
don't worry, I got this. We're gonna be fine.
So we were like, okay, we're gonna do it. We were like, no matter what, we're like pretty much in. We're just gonna try it, see what happens. Right. So we met the couple. They seemed cool. But there were immediate warning signs. They kept trying to get me alone. And that's not okay, right? Like, yeah. So, and I didn't really know what to do because I hadn't been in this situation. And neither did my husband because he hadn't either. So it was a mess, you know? And we ended up going through with it anyway, even though in retrospect, we shouldn't have. They weren't the right people.
But it's a learning experience.
Exactly.
It was your first chance, time out on the town together. You know, you're going to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
So after that, you know, my husband had a lot of feelings about what happened. And I guess the other couple did too, because they were kind of going through their own stuff, which was sort of reflected in the dynamic. Like, not anything to do with us.
No, but it got projected onto it.
Right. So we ended up, I insisted that we meet up and actually we had brunch and discussed what had happened. Like we just like
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You're such a professional.
Thanks. I'm a big talker. Like I really just like I always want to know what happened. You know,
I'm here for that.
I always want to like dive in. So we did, and it was like kind of an awkward conversation. And after that, we never saw them again because again, they weren't the right people for us.
It wasn't a good fit. Yeah.
But I felt really good that we, you know, talked through it and discussed what happened. And there were certain things about it that we had really enjoyed, you know, my husband and I. And so it was at least enough to feel like we wanted to pursue something like this again, but like with a little bit more
understanding,
knowledge
and
understanding. Yeah, exactly. So
I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
I feel like these little stories you're giving me, like I'm just eating them up. This is perfect. Like
I'm so glad.
So
I'm really enjoying talking about it. I personally would probably like to just like come out as polyamorous and live that way and not have to hide it. The people I have come out to, mostly like doctors, just because it can be relevant. Like, you know, if you're at your gynecologist,
right. If you're talking about like sexual history, you're like
right, yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And I've gotten very positive reactions from people, you know, like a lot of times people will look at me and be like, tell me how you did that, you know? Like,
I feel like that's the downside with fucking taboo things in sex and relationships and romance is like, you know, we're taught that this is the way to do it, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is the only way.
Yeah.
And then you see little snippets here and there of, like, you know, episodes like this where it's just a random podcast and you're talking about it. Or, you know, fucking a True Life episode from MTV. Sure. And you're like, oh, there's other things to do. And you get curious and you don't know how to go about it.
Well,
like,
luckily, you can really start anytime. Like,
even
fair. If you are
45.
45, and
right.
there's so much online that I think it's actually... probably the best time.
It's expanded the awareness so much, and like
I think it's gonna get normalized because I'm starting to see it show up in like mainstream TV shows or whatever. Like just an episode, right?
Just like casually,
right? It's like there was some woman on some show who was dating a couple, and it was part of the plot line for like two or three episodes, you know. And I was like, hey, cool, you know, like that's awesome.
And it was normalized,
right?
Like I was just talking the other day, and just because we had been mentioning LGBTQ, you know, I was telling my boyfriend about the show Modern Family. If you remember
great
that.
show, love it.
Oh my god, obsessed. And you know, it kind of felt maybe a little gimmicky in the beginning, having Dale.
Can't remember who that is.
Cam, I know was the one. I can't remember the other guy.
I can't either.
Whatever. But you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here and I was like, this is so like gimmicky. And then I look back on that and I'm like, it was so progressive.
Yeah, it was.
To have a gay couple normalized sleeping in a bedroom together with a daughter who they adopted on ABC.
Yeah, that show did a lot. That show did a lot. That show was great. My parents watched that show, and it made me so happy that they did. You know what I mean?
Yes. But I feel like, you know, it's our generation now that's changing the ideas and the stigmas behind all of this.
I love it. The kids are so good. Like, even like in middle school, they're like,
they don't care.
They got rainbows all over them. I love it. I love it.
An open lesbian woman who is inspiring kids in the sense of, you know, you can be whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing with kids that I feel like people, you know, everyone's trying to shelter kids. You don't want to spoil them. They don't know. They just don't know. They don't know and they don't care. They don't know it's a problem until you tell them it's a problem.
Something is bad, in heavy air quotes.
Yes.
Until you tell them that. Otherwise, they're just like, oh, this is just a part of life, which is all it is anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, you're not protecting kids. You're making their lives harder.
Exactly. Like, something that I've learned a lot more so recently, and like I struggle with PTSD, and a lot of my therapy is, you know, revisiting some of these rough times and adjusting and figuring out how to go about them, essentially. And one of the main things that always sticks with me that I try to work into my everyday language is nothing is inherently bad.
Yeah.
Nothing is bad.
Right.
You know, behavior isn't bad. You know, people aren't bad.
Right.
It's non-beneficial, maybe.
Even feelings.
Not ideal, but
even
it's
feelings,
not bad.
right?
Exactly.
Aren't bad. Like, even sadness. There's some really good Disney movie that, I can't remember what it's called, but they
Inside Out.
They show you
I love that movie.
So good, seriously. But they show you how important it is to let yourself be sad, because sad is not a bad emotion. There's nothing wrong with it. It's necessary, just like the more like positive, happier emotions.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be that guy. I feel like I'm always one that's like, tell me about bad shit. But like, I have to, my curiosity makes me want to ask, like, have you experienced any kind of like backlash or of some sort? Like, have you, I know you were saying it's mostly positive, but like, have you come out to anybody and there's been like, well, fuck you. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's more, I would say the biggest issue sort of, and this is, I think, part of that toxic monogamy thing also, or it's related, but, and I don't know if you've gone through this, I feel like you probably have, but if you're a single girl and a guy is interested in you and you're not interested, nothing will make him go away, right? Nope. If you are engaged or married, he's like, oh, you know, I'm really happy for you, congratulations, and just walks off, right? So it's like, if some other man has claimed you, right, then he respects that. Yeah. But if you're not interested, he doesn't respect that. So it's sort of a similar thing where it's like, I can't just be like, oh, well, I'm married. You know, if people know I'm polyamorous, then I'm still going to be receiving this sort of attention that I'm really not inviting in any way. Exactly. You know, but it's just like, oh, you're on the market. Like, oh, I could sleep with you. You know? Right. Exactly. That's not what it means. That's not what it means at all. So like, that's the sort of like negative reaction I would say I've had from guys. Okay. From women, it's more fear.
That's fair.
I could never share that dick. right? Like that's what I hear. Oh, but that dick is too good to share, right? Like that sentiment is disgusting to me.
Yeah,
if it's good dick, share it, right? Like
I love it. Like I feel like my whole thing, because like I said, I've been strictly monogamous my whole life. It's not anything I've ever, you know, explored or had like necessarily interest in exploring. You know, it's just not for me.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
Totally fine. Yeah.
I know. I can openly admit I have a crazy jealous streak, but I can also identify that came from years of being cheated on and that insecurity that was instilled, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Like, so I can see where, like, most girls would feel that fear or shame. I know that's
your
something,
history
like,
and your background are going to play a big role.
Exactly.
For sure.
And it's the idea of, like, oh, well, if he's sleeping with another girl, what if he leaves me for her kind of thing? But it's the communication.
Which is so
it comes
funny
back
to me,
the communication.
in a way, though. Because my husband was the same way. He was like, well, I feel like you're going to leave me then. And I was like, this is a way that I cannot ever have to leave you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want our marriage to ever end. Yeah. Like, we're such good life partners. We're going through life amazing, you know, but we don't have the energy to provide all that novelty for one another that we're both craving.
Yeah.
That's all it really is, you know? Like, we're already doing a lot for each other, but we need a little help because there's only so many hours in the day.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's fair. Especially since you were saying, like, he works all the time, too. Like,
right.
And I feel like it keeps coming back to this whole, like, you shouldn't have to sacrifice yourself for your partner. And the way to do that is... Say it again. The brain needs... Novelty. It's keeping that novelty and keeping it interesting and doing shit like that to make the relationship stay fresh.
Right. And I do want to add to that my husband and I do meet with a therapist just to make sure that we are putting enough energy into our, you know, primary relationship, right? Because it can be tempting to be like, oh, well, I don't need any novelty in this relationship because I'm getting it all from here.
Right.
That's not right either.
No, because that's how you pull each other apart.
Right. You don't want to end up with roommates with your husband and dating other people. That's not what polyamory is supposed to be. Yeah.
No. Well, that was kind of like the beauty of, you know, when we first talked about wanting to do this, because even my boyfriend and I will, you know, like we each have our own individual therapists, but we will sit down with either mine or his, whatever the case is, when we know there's an issue and we've tried to address it and either me or him is not reacting well to it, then we'll be like, we're tabling this, we're going to meet with our girl, and then we're going to revisit this and talk about it. So healthy. It's so healthy and normal, and I hate that that's another thing that's been so fucking stigmatized.
Therapy, I know.
You know?
Oh, like, I hate that too. I love therapy.
I love therapy.
Constantly. But I will say, in terms of negativity, my biggest concern would be my parents. My parents or his parents?
Parents.
Yeah, parents. We love parents.
Yes.
So parents are such a tricky subject. But with mine, I kind of feel like I've rebelled enough against their sense of normalcy that, like, while it would rattle them, and, you know, I'm sure my mom would cry, you know, but whatever, there are worse things.
Yeah.
They'd get over it.
Right.
You know, now, would they constantly be micromanaging my marriage or try to do that? At least, yeah, maybe, right? Maybe. But, like, would I be able to set up a boundary and be like, listen, like, just because you know this doesn't give you a right to get into my personal stuff? Like, yeah, absolutely. Probably.
Yeah.
My husband... It would be a little harder. His family is even more conservative than mine. I mean, mine is not really, but they are when it comes to me, if that makes sense.
Oh, I get it. Trust me.
Right. And then his family is, like, just generally conservative. So it would be maybe hard for them, too. But they also kind of are the type that just brush things under the rug. So I feel like after a week, it'd be fine, you know?
It would be like, it would be the family drama of the week, and then it'll be gone. It'll be like nobody even knew.
Well, even when Willow Smith came out, it was a big deal for like 2 days, right? Yeah. And then I think a few months later, I Googled her name, nothing about her being polyamorous. So it's like, the world cared for like a second. And then they just moved on.
Yeah,
like
it's the 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah.
If it's not something new, hot, and ready, then it's
right. And you hadn't even heard that she came out.
I had no idea. Is it something that maybe you're noticing over the years that this is something that maybe is becoming more normal? Or do you think that there's still like a massive stigma?
I think it's getting better. I definitely think it's getting better. I think, you know, like, I just think that the younger kids are just so much better. Like, they're just so much more accepting. and they understand that a lot of things are taboo for no reason. You know what I mean? I think it's becoming clear. So I kind of have high hopes for it being more normalized. I don't know if it'll be like super normalized in my lifetime, but you know, maybe the next generation after that.
I've heard the phrase, how does it go? Humans aren't supposed to be monogamous. Like, a whole bunch of times. I couldn't even tell you why, but like I've heard it so many times that humans are inherently polyamorous. And I don't know if I get it. I just know I've seen it. Would you agree with a statement like that? Or like maybe you can explain it to me? Like I don't...
So I don't want to exclude like people who aren't polyamorous, because I think that, you know, there definitely are people who are not polyamorous, who are monogamous. But by and large, do I believe that all humans are probably, like, you know, on a polyamory spectrum? Like, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I also believe most people are bisexual. That's just my own personal belief.
I think everybody, I like to use the term, everybody's a little bit gay.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Yeah,
everybody.
Yeah, right.
Everybody.
Like, I just think everyone is capable of being attracted to everyone else. Like, it's not like it's impossible ever, you know?
Right.
But it makes me think, this question makes me think of something I saw. Do you know that there's a museum of sex in New York City?
Oh my God, I've been trying to go for years. For years,
So
dude.
I've been a couple times. I love it. I tried to go recently too, though, and because of COVID, you had to book tickets in advance, so I wasn't able to. But back when I was, I don't know, maybe 18 or something, I went there, and we went up to the top floor, and the top floor is about the sexuality of animals.
Oh.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Super interesting, right?
Sure.
Like, all different kinds of animals. You know, they look at, like, insects, they look at birds, they look at dolphins, right? One of the things that they look at is there's some particular type of monkey, okay? And this, like, blew my mind. All right. So there's, like, a mountain range in Europe.
Okay.
I don't remember the details of this,
That's fine.
so, like, fact check me. But above, like, north of that mountain range, basically conditions are, like, really harsh, right? Like, it's cold.
Yeah.
South of the mountain range, beautiful conditions, right? Like, great weather, plenty of food, like, no issues with, like, shelter, whatever, right?
Right.
So there's two species of monkeys. They're very closely related, right?
Okay.
One species lives north of the mountain range, the other one lives
south
south of the mountain range. So
yeah.
the monkeys in the north, because of the harsh conditions, right? And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, like why the harsh conditions cause this. But whenever they see each other, like if they encounter another monkey, they fight instantly, right? They fight. They try to tear each other to pieces.
Jesus.
Now, south of the mountain range, this is my favorite part, okay? What do you think the monkeys do when they meet other monkeys?
Fuck.
Yep. Boys and boys, girls and girls, doesn't even matter, right? And that's literally how they say hello. And in fact, even if like those monkeys in the south get aggressive with each other at all, it turns into sex right away. There's no fighting. So, the reason a lot of the things about us are determined while we're in the womb.
Yes.
So, basically, you have whatever genes you have or not, right? But it's in the womb that a lot of those genes get switched on or off.
Okay.
And them getting switched on or off is based on the environment in the womb. The environment in the womb is basically the health of the mother. North of the mountain range, mom doesn't have enough food. She's scared for her life constantly. Her cortisol levels are high, right? Do you see what I'm saying? There's all these messages in the mom's body communicating with that embryo saying prepare for a harsh environment where you will have to fight for your survival, right? And so when those monkeys are born, they're born with aggression.
Born ready to fight.
Yeah, exactly. South of the mountain range, right? Mom has enough food. Mom's having sex all the time, right?
Mom's chilling.
Lots of
She's
friends.
happy. Yeah,
right? Like, so everything in mom's body is sending messages to the embryo, prepare for, you know, a world that is hospitable and prepare for a community that you're going to belong to, right? Where relationships are important. So it's like the total opposite. Now, my theory on this extends even more because if you look at like white settlers that left like their bad weather countries and came and invaded like other countries where like people were just living in peace because the climate was good, right?
Colonizers.
Oh my gosh, right? Like it explains a lot. Like so that's
I'm even linking it back to like I mean obviously there was a part of me that like knew how, you know, the mother's and how the mother's body can affect the embryo, fetus, whatever you want to call it. I've known that, but I never thought about how much the mother's environment plays a role directly to the fetus.
Yeah.
Like, even if we're just talking about cortisol levels,
right.
just that alone.
Right, absolutely. Or nutrition.
Yeah.
Or nutrition. Like, a malnourished mother is just going to produce a baby that needs food desperately and is willing to fight for it.
Like, I'm thinking generational trauma can come from just, like, outside factors of, like, you know, environment.
Yeah.
But generational trauma can literally come from biology.
Yeah.
It really makes it seem like that gap between people who are not so well off and people who are doing pretty good.
Right.
It really keeps you locked in that fucking cycle.
It really does. And it's just the biology of your mother's womb.
And it goes back to these
crazy.
Fucking monkeys on the mountain.
So, to answer your question,
yes.
To answer your question, I guess my theory is that if all of humanity had enough to go around and we lived in a worldwide society where there was peace and love everywhere, then I think it would be in the nature of humans to be polyamorous. But in a scenario where there's a lot of competition and scarcity, right, then I don't think that humans are as inclined to be polyamorous, right, because they're more into, you know, fighting between countries like we do now.
Right. So then how would that play into now where, you know, we've been ingrained in this cycle of you have to have one person. All right,
wait for it. I'm going to blow your mind.
I'm so ready, girl. Tell me.
This is my other theory for why historically it's been so important for humans to be monogamous. If a woman has a baby, you know that she's the mother. But you don't know who the father is unless she's only sleeping with one person. So, historically, we haven't had paternity tests, right? We haven't had the ability, right? And it's been so important, right, to know, like, that this is my child, right? So the reason that polyamory among women especially has been, you know, looked down upon so much is because there's this masculine obsession with, you know, continuing my bloodline. I don't want to be raising someone else's child, right? That's really what it's all about, which is another reason why male polyamory is seen as less problematic, right, than female.
Which is why, obviously, there's not a real correlation between, like, cheating and polyamory, but, like, why it's maybe a little bit more accepted for men. Just being taught that that's the reason.
Well, and also,
you know?
like, having birth control now kind of is freeing if you're trying to practice polyamory, because you don't have to worry about sort of having someone's kid that you don't want to.
Right.
And if you're, you know, a husband who does want to have kids with his wife, like, you can definitely make sure that you're the one who, you know, is fathering the child.
Right.
But they didn't have that. Yeah. So for most of human history, we haven't had that. Right. So I think it's this ingrained idea of monogamy is in large part coming from that, which is no longer really relevant.
But speaking of crazy shit, do you have any, like, crazy, funny, like, date stories or anything? Like, I feel like you have to probably have different experiences than what the average bear would have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so the one I have in my head, I don't know if everybody would find this funny, but I thought it was funny. So I had gone back to college at like 24 or something, because I was just interested in studying something different. Psychology, I thought that was my thing.
Cool.
So I did a year of psychology at like a CUNY, which is City University of New York. And in one of my classes, there was this guy who, like, you know, was cool. We were you know, hitting it off in class, right?
Like, okay. Cool.
And I think he was like 21 or something. And there, you know, just something about him. Like, I felt like my husband would like him, like, as a person, you know.
Right.
He was just very, like, respectful.
Like, they would get along.
Like, yeah, exactly. So one night I was home with my husband, and I was like, hey, there's this boy in my statistics class. Like, what do you think if I, you know, invited him over, right? So my husband's like, all right, do it. So we're sitting in statistics class the next day, and a snowstorm sets in, right? Oh, no. And so we're sitting there for like 2 hours. By the time the class is over, it's like, you know, 6 inches of snow on the ground.
Oh, no.
The parking lot is so congested. It's awful. So I turned to the kid and I'm like, hey, look, I'm in like this closed parking lot. Let me give you a ride to your car, right? He's like, okay. Yeah. So we ended up stuck in my car for like an hour and a half
trying
to get from one parking lot to another. Yeah.
Oh no.
And at some point I just turned to him and I was like, hey, like I have this question, like it's super awkward, like, but do you mind? Right? He was like, okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so sometimes my husband and I have like group sex experiences.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you would be interested. And he was like, yeah, absolutely, right? Like right away, right? Which was great. Yeah. Exciting, so I was like, okay, cool. And then he goes, but I've never done anything with a guy. And I was like, oh, actually, you won't have to. That's not really.
That's not what we're looking for here.
But I loved how quick the yes was.
Yes.
Even with the, the assumption.
I wonder if that was something he's always wanted to do, and was just like, yes, I'm here. Oh my god.
So anyway, he did end up coming over, and we did end up having a thing for a while. Yeah, it was nice. It did work well.
That's kind of awesome. I fucking love that story. Thank you for sharing that.
It was pretty funny.
That's so wholesome. I feel like I keep saying it, but like I really am just overwhelmed with happiness right now.
Thank you so much.
I don't know what it is. I'm so here for it.
Thank you for being so happy for me.
Dude, absolutely
happy for myself. I think
you should be.
It's really helped with my confidence, which is like just such an issue for me, but being able to like kind of live openly as I am on the inside has just made me feel so much more confident with freeing. Everything.
It's freeing. Absolutely.
Oh wait, I had one more thing that I wanted to say, sort of unrelated, but for some people also, like just with being bisexual, like if you are bisexual, it can be hard to just be with either a guy or a girl. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
trust me. I know.
So one of my friends was talking to me, and she was saying that she had an interest in trying out polyamory. She has a longtime boyfriend, but only so she could explore, this girls. Other side, right? Because she is bisexual, but hasn't dated a lot of girls, which I think is a common situation.
Right.
And it's a part of herself she would love to explore, and her boyfriend is just too scared. He's too jealous. He can't.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. It does really suck because like I fully understand what she means.
Through.
Yeah,
right,
and
100%.
like she does deserve to be able to explore that part of herself. It's not inherently a threat to her relationship with her boyfriend.
Not at all.
But he just can't. He's just not.
He can't do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I get it. Is it fair? No, but I understand where he's coming from in the fear, and I think a big part of that comes from the stigma of it. It makes it hard to adjust to a new lifestyle. Yes, that's the one that you've been conditioned.
Conditioned, fully
is
conditioned.
The only way.
Yes, definitely.
That's rough. No, I totally agree. That is absolutely a thing.
Yeah,
sexuality and relationships. And
there's no rules, guys. There's no rules. There's only the rules that you make with your consenting partner, and they're subject to change all the time, which is why you have to go over them again and again as time passes.
Yes. Revisit your relationship rules continuously. Alrighty. I mean, this has been a wild fucking ride. This was very exciting. I'm really glad that we got to sit down and talk about polyamory, man.
Me too. Yes. This has been really fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm glad that you invited me into your lovely home, and we're comfortable enough to come on and talk about this. For going forward, is there, let's say somebody listens to this and they're like, I want to be polyamorous. Do you have any advice for anybody who may want to try it, or any advice for someone who knows of someone, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, sure. I probably have a lot of advice, actually. Let's see. So I would say, like, doing research, definitely. And finding online communities and just kind of reading through what people have said about their experiences, reading through questions that they've had. There are some great websites, but basically you just want to have other people somehow in your life who are polyamorous so that you don't feel like there's something wrong with you. I mean, I know that's like a weird way of saying it, but when you're first thinking like, oh, hey, maybe I might be polyamorous, you feel really bad. Yeah. You feel like there is something wrong with you. You feel like you shouldn't want that. You feel like, I don't know, like there's something that you need to change, and that's not true. And how you can sort of convince yourself of that is to see other people who are living, you know, out and proud as polyamorous people.
Right.
So that would be a big part of it. And it's also a very friendly, welcoming community. So I've even reached out to people in Facebook groups and just said, you know, hey, like, I have some questions. Would you mind? And every time they've answered me with, of course, Aww. You know, what would you like to know? Aww. So just finding any individual and reaching out to them, you'll probably get a nice, positive response. And nobody's going to try to convince you to do anything that you don't want to do. It is not a predatory community by any means. Like, don't think that at all. But mostly just it's hard to remember that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, however you are is fine. And if you are polyamorous, that's great. If you're not, that's also great. If you're polyamorous and then after years of polyamory you realize that you're not feeling that anymore, that's fine too. Yeah. You know, like, your identity can change all the time. What you want can change all the time. It's not like a white or black thing at all.
You have anything else? Are you good?
No, I feel like this has been a great opportunity for me to kind of share my thoughts and my experiences so far. And, you know, if there are other people listening that feel like this might apply to them, then, you know, I do really encourage you to just do your research and kind of enjoy learning about it, whether it ends up being your thing or not.
Right. Go to the sex museum.
Yes, go to the sex museum. Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, this has been the Simply Whatever podcast with me, your lovely little host, Sam, and our anonymous special guest, who we will be referring to as A. All right, y'all. Have a good night.
Bye.
Don't do anything stupid. Bye.